My name is Michelle. Standing on the balcony, the bay spreads out under the star-dotted night sky, with bridges twinkling like strands of light. I wrap a shawl around my shoulders and whisper into the stillness. It's been a long journey, and I'm finally at a place where I can find peace within myself. Just a little while ago, I was sitting around the dinner table with colleagues, neighbors, and my dear friend, Daisy. The aroma of rosemary and sage from the oven mixed with the sound of laughter filled the apartment, a far cry from the holidays I used to spend at home. On the mantel, the piggy bank that used to be a symbol of humiliation now stands as a proud reminder of my perseverance. This transformation didn't come easily. It all started with a Christmas that broke my heart. I come from a family in Seattle. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, are well-to-do. My father is a successful businessman with a bit of an authoritarian streak, always believing his way is the only way. My mother, while soft-spoken, often just followed my father's lead. My brother, Ryan, is 2 years younger than me. He's always been the apple of our parents' eyes. That Christmas, the living room reeked of the artificial pine and cinnamon-scented candles. I sat cross-legged on the plush carpet, surrounded by bits of wrapping paper. My palms were pressed firmly against my knees to stop them from shaking. Then, my father, with a voice full of pride, made the announcement. "Ryan, this is for you. Your very own Audi A8. He dangled the key fob in front of Ryan, who sprang to his feet. His hair fell perfectly into place as if he was on a movie set. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of the sleek black car in the driveway, adorned with a huge red bow that almost covered the windshield. The red satin glistened under the dim Seattle sun. My mother clasped her hands under her chin, looking like she was witnessing a miracle. Ryan grinned widely and twirled the keys like a magician. I could almost hear the unsaid words, "He's the chosen one. He's worthy." Across my lap sat a cheap, plastic piggy bank, the kind you'd find at a dollar store. There was a price sticker on the bottom that said $3.99, and my parents couldn't even be bothered to peel it off. My mother urged me to open it. With a twist of the stopper, 2 crumpled bills fell into my palm. It was only $5. My father laughed off-handedly and said, "A start for your future home fund. You've always been so responsible, Michelle." Ryan leaned over, his cologne almost choking me, and whispered that he'd give me a ride in his Audi whenever I wanted. I carefully placed the piggy bank on the coffee table. The sound of its hollow shell hitting the glass seemed to echo louder than their laughter, louder than my own silence as I excused myself and headed for the stairs. Every creak of the railing as I climbed felt like a silent accusation. On the wall were rows of framed photos from birthdays, vacations, and graduations. Ryan's smiling face filled most of the frames. He was in his school football uniform, at his senior prom next to famous European landmarks that my parents had happily paid for. My own appearances were few and far between, tucked away in the corners as if I was just an afterthought. I locked myself in the bathroom. The harsh light in the mirror showed a pale, tearless face. I pressed my palms against the cold counter, trying to hold back the anger that had been bubbling inside me for years. Memories flashed before my eyes. At my high school graduation, I gave the valedictorian speech to an almost empty auditorium because my parents had gone to watch Ryan's football playoff game. In college, I worked 25 hours a week at the campus bookstore and cafe, juggling classes, scholarships, and loans. Meanwhile, Ryan was sipping coffee in Italian cafes, with my parents quietly wiring him money, all the while saying they didn't have extra funds. They used to tell me, "You're so independent. You can handle it." At first, I thought it was a compliment, but later, I realized it was just their excuse to give Ryan everything. The piggy bank with its measly $5 burned in my memory, not because of the small amount, but because it confirmed that nothing had changed. My degrees, my promotions, all my years of hard work, it meant nothing to them. I whispered to my reflection, "Maybe this Christmas will be different." But I knew deep down that it was wishful thinking. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan twirling those keys, and my parents' proud faces. At 3 a.m., I decided to leave. I opened my closet and took out an old duffel bag. I put in the things that really mattered: a teddy bear my grandmother gave me before she passed away, a photo album from college filled with friends who believed in me, and the blueprint of the first building I designed. The paper was creased from being unfolded and refolded so many times, and it still had a faint smell of ink. Downstairs, the Christmas tree lights were blinking rhythmically, highlighting the gifts I'd bought for them. A leather briefcase for my father, a pearl necklace for my mother, and a high-end camera lens that Ryan had mentioned in passing. I placed them gently at the base of the tree. I didn't want to take them with me, but I couldn't just discard the effort I'd put in. In the kitchen, I removed my house key from the key ring and left it beside the coffee maker. It glinted in the light, a silent declaration of my departure. Outside, my old Honda Civic, battered but reliable, was waiting. I got in, turned the ignition, and drove off as snow started to fall. The headlights cut through the darkness, and the highway stretching south seemed like a path to a new beginning. I drove for hours. Then, my phone lit up with a new voicemail. Against my better judgment, I played it. My father's angry voice boomed, "Michelle, return the car right now, or we'll report it stolen. This childish behavior has gone too far." I almost laughed. The Honda was mine, bought with my own hard-earned money, paid off after years of working double shifts. Yet, my father was willing to twist the truth to control me. The anger was overwhelming at first, but beneath it, I felt a cold, clear realization. This was who they were, willing to do anything to keep me in line. As dawn broke, I crossed into southern Oregon. I was exhausted when a diner with a flashing open sign lured me off the highway. The diner smelled of coffee and pancakes, with vinyl booths that stuck to your skin. A kind-looking waitress with gray streaks in her hair poured me a cup of coffee without asking. "Rough night?" she said. "Rough life," I muttered before I could stop myself. She put the coffee pot down and looked at me with understanding eyes. "Blood makes you related. Love makes you family," she said. Those words hit me hard, sinking deep into my soul. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, feeling less alone for the first time since I left Seattle. After leaving a generous tip, I continued my journey to California. Crossing the border felt like stepping into a new version of myself, even though my car still rattled. When I finally arrived in San Francisco, the city's skyline twinkled against the bay, like a promise I'd never dared to make. I parked in front of a pastel-colored Victorian house. The doors swung open before I could even knock. Daisy, my college roommate, pulled me inside. She didn't ask why I was there with a duffel bag and tired eyes. Instead, she simply said, "Family doesn't treat family like that," and led me to the spare room. I slept for 12 straight hours. When I woke up, sunlight filled the room, and I felt a little lighter. Over cups of coffee, Daisy coaxed the whole story out of me, listening without judgment. When I finished, she firmly said, "You're staying here until you figure out what comes next." No arguments. Things started to turn around quickly. Within a week, I requested a transfer to the San Francisco office of my architecture firm. My supervisor approved it without hesitation, and I finally started building a new life. Daisy also insisted that I see a therapist. She slid a business card across the table. Dr. Grace Miller. In her office filled with old books and the smell of lavender, I finally said the word favoritism out loud. Dr. Miller just nodded, as if naming the problem was the first step to breaking free. One Saturday, Daisy dragged me to a pottery class. I resisted at first, but when my hands sank into the cool clay, something magical happened. The clay resisted, then slowly gave way, and by the end of the class, I had shaped a lopsided bowl. It was ugly and beautiful at the same time. It was a sign that even with an imperfect start, I could create something meaningful. That night, I took the piggy bank from my bag and put a $5 bill inside. The sound of it catching in the plastic was louder than I expected, like a new beginning. I decided to add a $5 bill every week, not as a reminder of the insult, but as a measure of the life I was building. Rumors started to reach me. Old colleagues from Seattle sent me worried messages, saying they'd heard I had a mental breakdown. One even hinted that I'd joined some cult in California. It was ridiculous, but it still hurt. My parents were clearly spreading their version of the story, and people were believing it. Ryan wasn't helping either. His Instagram was filled with photos of him posing next to his Audi, with captions like #success, #dreamcar, #blessed. My parents' comments were full of praise, as if to underline my absence. But in San Francisco, my story was different. After I presented new calculations that saved weeks on a high-rise project, my team leader pulled me aside and said, "Brilliant work, Michelle," and he meant it. Colleagues looked at me with respect, something I'd always craved but never got at home. Still, at night, guilt would creep in. I'd lie awake wondering if I'd been selfish, if I'd abandoned my family. Dr. Miller helped me see through those feelings. "That isn't love," she said calmly. "It's emotional control in the disguise of love. Its purpose is to tie you down, not set you free." Then, an envelope arrived. It was a wedding invitation from my cousin Lily in Seattle. For days, I left it unopened on the counter. When I finally told Dr. Miller, she said, "Avoiding isn't the same as healing. Sometimes, you have to face your boundaries to know where they are." I booked a room at a downtown hotel. When my father called, insisting that I stay at the family's beach house with the rest of the family, I stayed silent until his voice turned angry. "Suit yourself," he spat and hung up. For the first time, I didn't try to smooth things over. Daisy helped me pick out a dress for the wedding. It was a midnight blue silk dress, tailored to fit me perfectly. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw the same blue that was once on Ryan's Audi. But this time, the blue was a symbol of strength and self-respect. On the flight north, I pressed my forehead against the window, watching the coastline disappear beneath the clouds. My heart raced, not from fear, but from the excitement of going back on my own terms. When I landed in Seattle's winter fog, I knew I wasn't the same girl who left with just a duffel bag. I was a woman who had built a life without them, and that was my armor. After the rehearsal dinner, Aunt Carol found me in the corridor. "Your parents want to see you in the study," she said, her face pinched. I followed her through the maze of hallways until I reached the heavy oak door. Inside, my father was pacing in front of the fireplace, my mother sat upright on the sofa, and Ryan was standing by the window, arms crossed. The atmosphere was tense, as if they had rehearsed this moment. My mother started, her voice trembling slightly. "Your father lost his job. My health hasn't been good. We might have to sell the house. All of this started when you left." Ryan glared at me and said, "Do you know what your silence has done? We're falling apart." I let their accusations hang in the air for a moment. Then, I put my bag on the table and took out an old photo album. I flipped it open to show the stark contrast between Ryan's elaborate birthday parties and my simple ones, his celebrated graduations while mine were ignored. My father scoffed, but his face paled when I showed him my student loan statements. I had $70,000 in debt, while Ryan had a fully funded education and trips abroad. "You always managed," my mother whispered. "Managed doesn't mean unworthy," I replied firmly. Finally, I took out the piggy bank. I opened it, and dozens of crisp $5 bills spilled out onto the table. One for every week since Christmas. "This is what you thought I was worth, and this is what I've learned to claim for myself," I said. Ryan's confident facade cracked. He stared at the money, then at me, speechless. I stood up straight and said, "If there's any chance of us getting back together as a family, we need family therapy, and you have to respect my boundaries. Otherwise, this is the last time we'll meet." Later, on the terrace, Ryan leaned against the railing, his shoulders slumped. I had to sell the Audi, he said, his voice rough. I couldn't keep up with the payments. My business dried up, and I'm in debt. The old me would have jumped in to help, but this time, I just said, I'm sorry you're going through this. I can help you make a budget, but that's all I can do. You have to figure the rest out on your own. He looked at me, shocked, waiting for more. When he realized I wasn't going to be his safety net anymore, he nodded. Something shifted between us. Through the terrace doors, I could hear relatives whispering about my parents' financial troubles. It was a heavy revelation, but it didn't crush me. Their choices had led them here, and for once, I wasn't going to be the one to fix everything. I turned back towards the ballroom, ready to face whatever was left of the night. And now, here I am, on this balcony, looking out at the beautiful bay. I've come so far from that broken-hearted girl on Christmas night, and I'm ready to embrace whatever the future holds.